I always thought I knew my dog. Every twitch of his ears, every happy thump of his tail, every sigh he gave when he curled up beside me on the couch. I understood him like I understood myself. Maybe even better. But that night, everything changed. He looked at me. Not the way dogs usually do, not with love or hunger or playful curiosity. This was different. This look was deeper, heavier. It wasn't just a glance, it was a message. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made the hairs on my arms stand up. No wag of the tail. No familiar tilt of the head. Just stillness. And in that silence, I knew something was terribly wrong. It wasn't just the way he stared. It was the way the air seemed to shift around us. The sudden pressure in the room, like the house was holding its breath. Outside, the wind stopped. The hum of the fridge went quiet. Even the clock on the wall, which ticked without fail, felt muted. I opened my mouth to speak, to ask him what was wrong, as ridiculous as that sounds, but the words never made it out. He turned his head slowly, eyes still locked onto mine, and whimpered. One small, broken sound. That was when it all began. I wish I could say I didn't ignore the signs after that. I wish I could say I knew what was coming. But the truth is, I had no idea what he was trying to tell me. Not then. And by the time I understood, it was already too late. The day started like any other. I woke up to the soft weight of Baxter pressed against my legs, snoring gently. He always slept there, right at the foot of the bed, like my own personal guardian. The morning sun spilled through the curtains, dust dancing in the golden light. It should have felt peaceful, normal, but something already felt off. Baxter didn't stretch like he usually did. He didn't yawn and pad over to the door to nudge it open with his nose, tail wagging. Instead, he just sat up, perfectly still, watching me. I remember laughing, trying to shake off the creeping weirdness. What's up, buddy? You hungry? He didn't move. I reached out to scratch behind his ear, and that's when he looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes, those warm, familiar brown eyes, had changed. There was something in them I couldn't place. Not fear. Not pain. It was more like recognition or realization. Like he saw something in me I didn't know was there. I froze, my hand hovering just inches from his head. Bax. He blinked slowly, then whimpered. It was soft, barely there, but it sent a chill straight down my spine. I tried to shake it off. Got up, made coffee, and turned on the news like I always did. The anchors were talking about a cold front moving in. Snow by the weekend. I only half listened, because Baxter hadn't followed me into the kitchen like he always did. I turned around. He was still in the bedroom doorway, just staring. Not at me this time, through me. That was the first time I thought maybe he wasn't looking at me at all. Baxter came into my life when I needed something to believe in. I just moved back into my childhood home, the one with the crooked porch and peeling shutters after my dad passed. Everything in the house still smelled faintly, like his aftershave and dust. Grief sat heavy in every room. I didn't realize how quiet a house could be until I came back to this one alone. That's when I found Baxter. He was at the shelter on a rainy Tuesday, curled up in the corner of his cage like he was trying to disappear. He wasn't a puppy, already graying around the snout, but his eyes, there was something in them. Something kind. Something tired. We saw each other, and that was it. The first night home, he wouldn't leave my side. Slept by the couch while I dozed off with a bottle in my hand and an old photo album on my lap. I remember waking up to him pressing his head against my knee like he was checking to make sure I was still there. From that point on, we were inseparable. Mornings meant slow walks through the woods behind the house, Baxter trotting ahead but always checking back. Afternoons were lazy and sun-drenched. He'd doze under the window while I tried to write, or read, or just remember how to exist. At night, he'd curl up beside me, sigh like an old man, and fall asleep while I told him things I hadn't told anyone. I told him about the dreams I'd been having, about the noise I sometimes heard in the attic, scratches, footsteps, about the way certain corners of the house still smelled like my mom's perfume, even though she'd been gone for years. He never barked, never growled, just listened. He was my peace in a house full of ghosts. So when he stopped being himself, I noticed. Right away. It wasn't just the stare that morning. It was everything else. Too still, too quiet. He hadn't brought me his torn-up rope toy in days. Hadn't whined for the leftover chicken. He didn't even react when the mailman dropped a package on the porch, a man Baxter usually treated like an invading warlord. Something inside him had changed. And somehow, deep in my bones, I knew. Whatever was wrong with him didn't start that morning. It had been building. Quietly. Patiently. I just hadn't seen it. The first time I heard it, I thought I was dreaming. It was just past 2 a.m., the kind of hour where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I woke up to the sound of nails tapping against the floor. Fast, frantic. Baxter. I sat up and squinted into the hallway. The only light came from the bathroom nightlight down the hall, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. I could hear him pacing, circling, whining. Not loud, just low and breathy, like he was trying not to be heard. Bax. I called out, voice rough with sleep. The tapping stopped. Then I heard it, this soft, guttural growl. Not aggressive. Not warning. More like confusion. Like fear. I got up, heart beating faster than I wanted to admit, and stepped into the hallway. Baxter was there, frozen in front of the basement door, ears pinned back, staring at it like he was waiting for something to come through. I flipped on the light. He didn't move. I knelt beside him, trying to get him to look at me. Hey, what's going on? That's when I noticed his fur, raised along his back like a ridge of static. His breathing was shallow, eyes locked on the doorknob. Nothing was on the other side. At least nothing I could see. I opened the door, half expecting something to come rushing out. But it was just stairs. Cold, dark stairs leading down into silence. I waited. Nothing. I turned back to Baxter, expecting him to retreat, or at least relax. But instead, he stepped forward and growled again. Louder this time. That night, I slept on the couch with the TV on and every light in the house burning. It didn't stop there. Over the next few days, his behavior grew stranger. He stopped eating. Spent hours staring at corners. Sometimes, I'd find him under the table, body rigid, eyes darting toward the ceiling as if he was tracking something I couldn't see. One night, I woke to find him standing on the bed, facing the bedroom window. The curtains were drawn. He was growling. But what chilled me most, what made my blood run ice cold, was that his tail wasn't up. It was tucked. Whatever he saw, or heard, or sensed, he was terrified. And now, so was I. I called the vet the next morning. There's a tone you take when you're worried but don't want to sound crazy. I used it. I told them Baxter had been acting off, skipping meals, restless at night, unusual vocalizations. I didn't mention the staring, the basement door, or the growling at windows. That stayed between me and whatever quiet dread had settled into our home. Dr. Klein agreed to squeeze us in. The ride there was unsettling in a way I hadn't expected. Baxter didn't stick his head out the window like he usually did. Didn't whine when we passed the park. He just sat in the back seat, unmoving, eyes fixed straight ahead. No excitement. No fear. Just stillness. Dr. Klein had known Baxter for years. She greeted him with the same soft voice and warm smile she always did, crouching to his level like he was a child. Hey there, old man. Not feeling yourself, huh? He didn't react. Not even a tail wag. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. Ran the usual tests, heart, eyes, temperature. Listened to his breathing. Felt along his spine, checked his joints. I sat on the little stool in the corner, trying not to chew my nails into nothing. After about 15 minutes, she stepped back, arms crossed. He's physically fine, she said. Maybe a little dehydrated. But there's no fever. No signs of injury. Heart rate's normal. Joints feel good. You said he's not eating. I nodded. He barely touches his food. And he won't play. He's been quiet. Any environmental changes? She asked. New food? New people in the house? No. Just me and him. She paused. Sometimes dogs can sense things we can't. Stress. Illness. Even mood changes in their humans. I opened my mouth to say something, then stopped. She was being kind, rational, professional. But even as she spoke, I saw it. Baxter, lying on the cold exam table, eyes not on her or me or the room, but fixed on the corner of the ceiling. Unblinking. Dr. Klein noticed too. She followed his gaze, looked back at me. "I'll run some blood work. Just to be safe," she said. When I brought him home, the silence in the house felt heavier than before. I turned on music, left the TV on, made extra noise just to fight the quiet. But that night, as I drifted off with the light still on, I could swear I heard something. A low, almost inaudible whisper. It didn't come from the TV, and it wasn't in my head. It was coming from inside the walls. It started with the photograph. I wasn't looking for it. I had gone into the attic to check for mice, something to explain the scratching behind the walls. A simple, normal problem I could solve with traps and peanut butter. Anything to make the creeping feeling go away. The attic was colder than it should have been. Dust hung in the air like fog, swirling with every breath I took. The wooden beams groaned underfoot as I stepped around boxes sealed with yellowed tape, marked in my father's handwriting. That's when I saw it. An old shoebox, unmarked, pushed behind a stack of books. The cardboard had softened from age, corners curling. I lifted the lid and was hit with the smell of old paper and something else, something faintly metallic. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Most were black and white, faded at the edges. People I didn't recognize. A woman with dark eyes holding a baby. A boy standing in front of the fireplace I now sat by most nights. A family gathered on the porch, my porch, smiling stiffly as if someone had asked them to look happy, even though they weren't. And in almost every photo, a dog. Not Baxter, but a dog that looked like him. Same ears, same eyes. Always in the background, half in shadow, always watching. I stared at one photo in particular. It showed a girl, maybe 10 years old, sitting on the living room floor, her arms around the dog. She was smiling. The dog wasn't. Its eyes were wide, almost frightened. Behind them, just barely visible in the mirror on the wall, was a figure. Blurry. Wrong. I slammed the box shut. That night, Baxter stood at the top of the stairs for nearly an hour, tail tucked, growling low into the darkness below. Not barking. Not moving. Just growling. I called his name. Tried to coax him back into the bedroom. He didn't even flinch. I ended up sitting beside him, back against the wall, eyes fixed on the black mouth of the staircase. Waiting. Listening. And as I sat there, I remembered something my dad used to say, something I always thought was a joke. "This house remembers everything," he'd say. "Even the things we don't." I used to laugh. But now? Now, I wasn't so sure. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a memory, something I'd forgotten long ago, now unspooling in perfect clarity. The kind of dream that lingers in your skin long after you wake, like smoke in your clothes. I was standing in the hallway. My hallway. But the wallpaper was different. Faded green with a pattern of twisting vines I didn't recognize. The lights buzzed overhead, too bright, and the air was thick with the scent of lavender and old wood. Baxter was there. Not the way he is now, quiet and distant, but alert. Present. His ears twitched as he looked up at me, tail wagging once, twice, then still. Then he turned. He padded down the hallway toward the basement door, the one he's been watching night after night, and stopped in front of it. Slowly, it creaked open. What I saw wasn't the basement. It was a room. Familiar and wrong all at once. A child's room. Yellow wallpaper. A rocking chair in the corner, moving gently back and forth though no one sat in it. A small bed, perfectly made, with a stuffed rabbit propped neatly against the pillow. There was a window. Rain streaked down the glass. But it wasn't night. It was dusk, or maybe dawn. That heavy in-between light. I stepped inside. The air changed. Warmer. Heavier. A music box played from somewhere unseen, its tinny tune slow and sad. My throat tightened. I didn't know this room, but I felt like I had stood in it before, like I had cried here. like I had lost something here. That's when I saw the girl. She sat on the floor, her back to me, hair in long dark braids, whispering to something in her lap. The dog from the photo sat next to her, silent. I tried to speak, tried to ask who she was, but no sound came out. She turned her head. Her eyes were mine. The dream shattered. I woke gasping, drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Baxter was sitting at the foot of the bed, staring at me. No growling, no whimpering, just watching. As if he had seen it too. As if it wasn't just a dream. I couldn't stop thinking about the girl from the dream. Her eyes, my eyes, haunted me. I kept telling myself it was just a trick of the mind, some weird subconscious projection. But deep down, I knew better. The dream had felt too specific, too vivid. And the room, that room hadn't just been a dream. It was real. I had seen it before. But not in waking life. In that old shoebox. I waited until morning, then went back to the attic. Baxter didn't follow me this time. He sat at the bottom of the ladder, whining softly, like he knew I was about to find something I wouldn't be able to forget. The box was still there. I pulled it out, set it down in the slant of morning light cutting through the attic dust, and started sifting through the photos again. My hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from that strange sense that the past was watching me. And then I found it. The photo I hadn't seen before. It had been tucked behind a stack of letters, as if hidden on purpose. A girl, standing in front of a mirror. The same yellow wallpaper behind her. The same rocking chair. Her face was turned slightly, not quite in profile, but enough that I could see it. I stopped breathing. It was me. Not someone who looked like me. Me. But younger. Maybe 8 or 9. Same scar above the left eyebrow. Same slope to the nose. Same eyes. I don't remember ever taking that photo. I don't remember that room. And in the mirror behind the girl, standing just behind her, was a shape. A tall, indistinct figure, blurred like motion caught in an old film. No face. Just a suggestion of presence. Its hand rested on the girl's shoulder. She didn't look afraid. She looked resigned. I dropped the photo. Something cold rushed through the attic, though there were no open windows. The temperature dropped so fast my breath puffed in the air. The old light bulb above me flickered once, then went out. In the dark, I heard Baxter barking from below. Panicked. Desperate. Like he thought I wouldn't come back down. I ran. I didn't go back up the rest of the day. Couldn't. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something I hadn't before. The girl in the photo wasn't just me. She was someone I used to be. Someone I had forgotten. Or maybe, someone the house had made me forget. It happened on the third night after I found the photo. I hadn't slept. Not really. I'd drift off for minutes at a time, only to jolt awake with images burned into my mind. The girl in the mirror. The figure behind her. The room with the yellow wallpaper. That same, strange melody from the dream humming in my ears, faint and maddening. And Baxter had stopped barking. He no longer growled at the walls or the door or the basement stairs. Instead, he'd just stare. At me. At the mirror in the hallway. At the photograph I couldn't bring myself to throw away. That night, the silence was unbearable. Even the wind outside had stopped. No creaks in the walls. No scurrying in the attic. Just stillness. Until Baxter sat up, slowly, and looked at me like he was waiting for permission. Then he spoke. Not a bark. Not a growl. He spoke. It wasn't like a human voice, not exactly. It came through as a thought, pressing itself against the inside of my skull, cold and soft and heavy. You're remembering. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I nearly knocked the lamp off the table, scrambling to sit up. What the hell was that? I said aloud, breath catching. What are you? Baxter didn't move. He didn't blink. I was told to protect you, but you weren't supposed to remember. I backed away slowly, my feet dragging across the hardwood floor. My legs felt weak. This isn't real. I'm dreaming again. No. The word hit like a whisper inside my chest. The house remembers. And now so do you. Flashes hit me all at once. That room, the yellow wallpaper, a lullaby sung off-key, a cold basement floor, and a door that never opened. The feeling of hands around my wrists, pulling me back when I tried to run. A voice behind the door, saying my name like it belonged to it. I sank to my knees. Tears blurred my vision. Why don't I remember all of it? Baxter stepped forward now, slow and careful, placing one paw gently against my leg. Because you were taken. The air left my lungs, and something else was put in your place. The next morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, hollow. Like the walls were holding their breath, waiting for me to make the final move. Baxter wouldn't leave my side. He watched me with those deep, endless eyes as I walked slowly through the house, tracing my fingers along door frames and picture rails, listening. And then, somewhere between the stairs and the kitchen, I heard it again. That music box melody. Faint. Twisted. Coming from behind the wall. I didn't think. I knew. I grabbed a hammer and followed the sound, Baxter padding just behind me, ears low, tail still. The noise led me to a wall I'd passed every day without thought. Just drywall and paint. But now I saw it. A faint seam near the baseboard. A warped edge like something had been patched up. I hesitated, my breath catching. Then I swung. The wall cracked open with a dry, splintering sound. Dust choked the air as fragments of plaster crumbled away. Behind it, buried in darkness, was a space no bigger than a closet. A hollow cavity sealed off from memory. Inside it I found a door. Not wood. Not metal. Stone. Smooth and cold, like it had always been there, like the house had grown around it. Baxter stood at my side, unmoving. You don't have to open it, his thought voice came, slow and low. But I do, I whispered, because some part of me already knew what was on the other side. I touched the door, and it opened itself. The room was identical to the one in my dream. The yellow wallpaper, the rocking chair, the bed, even the stuffed rabbit, still propped against the pillow, as if waiting for someone to come back. But the air was wrong. It felt old, wounded. At the center of the room stood a child. She turned slowly. Her face was mine, younger, frozen. Her eyes were hollow. You left me, she whispered. I dropped to my knees. No, I didn't know. I didn't remember. You were supposed to keep us safe. But you forgot. The walls pulsed. The floor groaned. Baxter growled. Not at the girl, but at something rising behind her. A shadow. Taller than the ceiling. No face. Just eyes. Burning, empty, endless. Baxter lunged. The room screamed. I reached for the girl, my younger self, and pulled her into me, holding her tight. I remember now. I remember you. The moment I said it, the shadow faltered. Light burst through the seams of the room. Cracks of gold tearing through the wallpaper, the floor, the very air. The shadow shrieked and crumbled into dust. And the child disappeared in my arms. Not violently. Peacefully. Like she was never meant to be trapped at all. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the hallway. The wall was intact. But Baxter was gone. People talk about losing pets like it's a chapter in a long story. They don't tell you how quiet it gets. How every creak feels like a ghost. How every time you glance at the window or the door, you half expect to see that tail wagging, those paws scratching, that familiar weight beside your bed. Baxter was never just a dog. He was a guardian. A witness. A reminder. He looked into my eyes that morning because he knew I was forgetting again. Because he knew the house was waking up, and that I wouldn't survive it unless I remembered who I was. What I'd survived. What I'd buried. Sometimes I still hear that melody faintly late at night. And sometimes, when I wake up at 3 a.m. and glance at the foot of the bed, I swear I see him. Watching. Waiting. Making sure the house forgets nothing.